This week, I'm joined by Tricia Nelson, who lost 50 pounds and kept it off finally by identifying and healing the underlying causes of her emotional eating. And now she helps other women do the same. She's an emotional eating expert, a TEDx speaker with an impressive over 2 million views on YouTube. She's also the author of a #1 bestselling book, Heal Your Hunger: 7 Simple Steps to End Emotional Eating Now, and is the host of a popular podcast, The Heal Your Hunger Show. She's spent a lot of time and has a lot of experience talking about emotional eating and brings so much quality information to help people understand what is the difference between emotional eating and binge eating and food addiction. How can we know if this is an issue for us or not? And what can we actually do to start changing it? The surprising thing is that it's not actually about the food in so many cases. It's really about some underlying things that causes us to eat. So this was such an enlightening and helpful conversation to me to really understand people who are struggling with emotional eating. And I think you'll really enjoy it as well. Tricia, thank you so much for being with me today.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I would love to start off with just hearing about you and your personal journey and how you came to start Heal Your Hunger.
Yes, it's very personal. I was an emotional eater probably from the get-go, or at least as far back as I can remember. I was really excited about food. So, sugar and sweet, I like to call it ooey gooey chewy foods. It was a big highlight for me, when we were going out to eat, to a restaurant or having a celebration or whatever. Food was so exciting to me, which would have been not a big deal, except that I did gain weight easily, and by age 21, I was 50 pounds overweight, and I was definitely a binge eater, and that was really hard for me, meaning I had a lot of shame about it. I had shame about my weight. I tried all kinds of diets and exercise programs, and nothing really worked for me. And I mean, I could lose weight, but I'd always put it back on. And I had a roll on my tummy that I would scrunch up with my hands and imagine cutting off like you cut fat off the side of a steak. And I thought about getting some rare disease where I'd automatically lose weight, joining the army. So I'd be forced to exercise at boot camp. So some pretty crazy things because I felt very desperate about my situation. And it wasn't until I met somebody who had lost over 100 pounds really through emotional and spiritual means. And so he guided me. He was my mentor for many years. And then we worked together to help others because it was so amazing what happened for me. Like I didn't have to diet anymore. I didn't have to do crazy exercise programs. But my relationship with food changed to where it wasn't the be all and end all. It wasn't, I had to have it. I didn't have that compulsion to eat. So that's really, how it all got started. Many years later, we stopped doing what we were doing, and I codified everything we had done and wrote my book, Heal Your Hunger, and started my podcast. And so, I've been guiding women, thousands of women since then, to heal their relationship with food, chronic dieters, people who it's like not working for, everything they try, eat less, exercise more, not going to happen. So, yeah, so it's been an amazing honor.
Amazing. Yeah, I feel like so many people can relate to the examples that you gave of just having that compulsion towards food and, maybe those kind of shameful moments of like, oh, like really hating part of your body or really not knowing. Sounds like kind of almost like being out of control of what to do and just wishing that there is something that you could do that doesn't require, these crazy diets that are just all over the place still.
Well, and they don't work. I mean, that's the thing is for some people, they might work, but for the kind of people I serve, they've done it over and over and they feel really demoralized by it. I mean, it sucks to lose weight and then put it back on. Everybody's complimenting you. Oh, it's so great. And then they see you 6 months later and you've gained 30 pounds or 30 of the 50. And so it's very demoralizing. And then there's so much shame about it because you're typically, if you are a binge eater, you're definitely not doing that in front of other people. So it ends up being a habit that you do late at night when everybody else has gone to bed, and when you're strong and successful in other parts of your life and yet you are out of control with food, you just hate on yourself. You're like, what is wrong with me? Like I have it together in so many ways. Like, why can't I nail this? And when you can't, you just, it's baffling. It's absolutely baffling. So, those people, diets aren't going to work for those people, and I really consider it to be a spectrum. Emotional eating, just to back it up, is really, I like that term, because whether you're underweight or overweight or up and down, it doesn't really matter. It matters that you are using food in an emotional way. I call it, like, as the most basic term, I call emotional eating to feel better. Something's not quite right, so you're like, maybe this will fix it, And we do other things as well, but the food is always there, and it's so accessible and easy. You just go to the refrigerator, you open the door, and it's like, what can I eat? But it never truly satisfies us, because it's not food we're really hungry for. But my experience is that it's really a spectrum. Like, some people, like, I feel like we all emotionally eat. Let's face it. It's so easy to do. Food is super comforting. It lights up, carbs light up the serotonin and the dopamine in our brain. So it's easy to do. It's easy to get some relief from it. But somebody who's really feeling out of control and hopeless is probably on the higher end of the spectrum. So on the low end of I call it the emotional eating spectrum, and the low end is emotional eating, and this is somebody who might do it now and then, not a big deal. Or even if they, let's say they go on a cruise and it's prepaid, so you eat, eat and drink, till your heart's content, and then you gain 5 pounds, you come home and you're like, oh my God, my pants are tight. Yuck. I don't like this feeling. So you exercise more and you cut out sweets, and boom, like, you're back on track. The pants are feeling better. That's somebody with a lot of control and not too many consequences. 5 pounds, not earth shattering. And that's really how we determine where somebody is on the spectrum, is the level of control they have and the consequences, like, how's it affecting your life? So somebody on the high end of the spectrum is somebody with very little control. Like, they come home from that cruise and they're like, they can't pull it together. They can't get back on track because they opened the gate for sweets again, for all that, yummy food. And it's hard to course correct. And then that 5 pounds turns into 10 pounds, turns into 15 pounds. And it also affects your mood. You feel so mad at yourself. Like, I was doing so good before the cruise, wanted to fit in my, bathing suit, look good. And so you can't pull it together. So that's somebody with very little control. And if you do that, if you're on the dieting roller coaster ride long enough, your body is talking back to you. And that's when you start seeing people, right? The gut issues, the prediabetes, the, all kinds of issues, autoimmune. And so your body's not going to stand for it. And that's when the consequences mount up. So somebody on the high end of the spectrum, where you've said you really need to watch the sugar, you really need to cut out the gluten or whatever, and they can't. Like, they're like, got it, doc. And then they're not. Like, they're not doing it. They're still binging. They're still sneaking, right? Those foods. They don't want to tell you about it. They're embarrassed.
Yeah.
That's somebody in the more addictive part of the emotional eating spectrum, to the point of, I call it food addiction. And that's where I was, where I would binge, where I would have like this compulsion to eat, even though I knew better, even though my doctor said, cut that out. You can't just stop, And so I do have a quiz on my website where people can find out where they are on that spectrum. Not just based on what I'm saying, but like, take the quiz, get your personalized score, find out if you're an emotional eater or a food addict, or somewhere in between, and then you get next steps for what to do after that. But that is going to inform, how much help you need. Like, can you course correct? Are you suffering consequences from your aberrant behavior with food?
Yeah, that's so helpful, because I feel like, yeah, so many of us can relate to that. Of like, oh, well, I have a bad day and I really want that chocolate or whatever. I'm guilty of that for sure.
Yeah.
But knowing the distinction of, how much control do you have and how much is it really affecting your life, to really see, okay, is this actually an issue or not? Like, can you
Yeah.
get it back in line?
Yeah. And it's not just health issues either. It's our whole demeanor. Like, when you're doing secretive things with food that you feel ashamed about, it sucks your energy. It saps your
Mhm.
self-confidence. It affects your libido. Like you don't like after a binge, the last thing you want to do is be touched and have sex. And so when your pants don't fit and you have to go up a size, man, it is really affecting how you feel about yourself. And if you're not feeling good and confident about yourself, it affects your job. It affects your show up. If you're, looking for a mate, it affects your like what you feel worthy of.
Mhm.
And so it will spread throughout your life without even realizing it. And that's why it's so much of a bigger deal than, we think like, oh, haha, I ate the bag of cookies. So what? True, if it's a now and then or very spread apart incidents, but the more that happens and the more you think about food, because it's not just overeating. Like some people can have a ton of control, right? It's more that they're obsessed, like obsessed. I was so obsessed with food and weight. Like I thought about my weight all the time. When I look at pictures of myself, I know in every photo in the past, like how I was feeling about my body in that photo, what my eating was like. Was I doing well at the time or was I in that hole of binge eating? So, just thinking about food and weight all the time is robbing us of our happiness, of our presence with people we love, and just our sense of joy. Like you can't be joyful when all you want to do is get alone so you can eat. Like that's
Yeah.
not a good life.
Yeah, yeah. I can imagine that would be just such a, like, all-consuming thing then, and that
Yeah.
games.
Yeah. And it's just nobody should have to live that way.
No. And is that why you think diets fail, especially for this population, or why do you think that is?
Yeah. So what happens with diets is, diets will take away all your fun food. It's like, don't eat sugar, don't eat carbs, whatever the diet is. Doesn't really
Mhm,
matter. There's jillions of them. But every diet is making you eat in a way that you're not prepared to eat. It takes
mhm,
away all those foods that you are usually eating, and then the diet's like, go get them, tiger. You're going to be so happy. And you are like new diet syndrome is like I got my scale, I got my spandex, my I'm going to the gym, so I have my workout clothes. And for a little while you're like, we're doing it. And it feels
mhm,
great because when you stop eating crap, you will definitely feel better,
mhm,
right? When you start like exercising your body, you're going to feel results. And but then it's like you can't keep it up. So to me, I could last about 2 weeks and then it became a slog. And then I was like, oh my God, I just want chocolate. So
mhm.
and so the new diet syndrome wears off and then it's a slug and you can only do that so long because willpower won't sustain you. You'll run out and it will be and the reason why is because when all those foods are taken away, and the excitement of the new thing wears off, what happens is all the feelings that we had pushed down with food start to trickle to the surface, right? They're coming up and we don't have any tools. Diets don't give us tools for dealing with our emotions that we stuffed down when we were emotionally eating. So all this stuff comes up, and then we're stressed out, we're bitchy and cranky because we've got stuff and we don't know where to put it. And
Mhm.
so then it's like, okay, I'll go back to what I know works, and that is food. It's like a knee-jerk thing. If we haven't learned a new way of living with our emotions and a new way of dealing with stress and new habits for self-care, we're going exactly to what we know will work, and it works fast. And it does, it works great, but the consequences are what suck.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's where the self-sabotage comes in. To me, it's the piece that's missing when we are on the weight loss journey. And unfortunately, with GLP-1s now, people don't realize it's really not about the food or the weight. Like overweight is a symptom of overeating. Overeating is a symptom of what's eating me.
Mm,
So if we're not dealing with that, the weight loss is great. You'll get a high, people will notice, you wear new clothes, and then it will pale because it's your new normal. What's going to happen with those feelings? Have you made changes in the way you live so that you're, having a different relationship with food? And often I call it a living problem rather than an eating problem. In my book, Heal Your Hunger, I talk about the anatomy of the emotional eater, which is 24 personality traits that make up the emotional eater's personality profile. And this is, to me, where we need to put a spotlight, because we all know how to diet. We all know, we probably shouldn't eat sugar, right? Sugar is a killer. We know processed carbs or processed anything isn't good for us. Eat real food, now we have a food pyramid that says that. So, but the thing is that when we can't do that, and when we are basically in that hole with emotions, it's really important to know that we need a new way of living. So the personality traits are things that have nothing to do with food, but everything to do with why we eat. So the number one trait of the anatomy of the emotional eater is people pleasing.
Mm.
Yeah. And I've never met an emotional eater that wasn't a people pleaser. Why? Because we typically, as kids, not always, we might have had a charmed childhood. I had a pretty charmed childhood, but I did have sexual abuse in my past, and not everybody has trauma who's an emotional eater, but it doesn't mean everything was, rosy. And so what happens if we don't have a strong sense of ourselves, we learn at a young age, really as a coping tool, we learn to be a people pleaser because we get immediate gratification. People give us kudos. We get the atta girls, and it feels good. And it might have gotten you through really tough times in your childhood. If you have a raging alcoholic parent, you sure want to be a people pleaser, so you don't get your ass kicked. And so then what happens is what was once a coping tool becomes just a way of being in adulthood, and it backfires. It's no longer saving our life, it's killing us. And like, how does people pleasing kill us? Well, you knock yourself out to go the extra mile. You're super on top of it. You're always doing the extra work. You're staying up late to cook the brownies for the soccer team. I mean, you're always there. Like, people can depend on emotional eaters. We're the yes girls. We'll get her done, but at a seriously high cost. And I'm sure that's when you see people, right? Like, their adrenals are shot. I mean, they are exhausted. They've lost their lust, like their lift, right, in life. They're spring in their step. They're beaten down, but that's because of how they're living, And so, in part, obviously, but it's not good for the body to be a people pleaser because it will exhaust you. And on top of that, really common for emotional eaters is then we're resentful. Because we're saying yes all the time. Nobody's recognizing us the way we want to be recognized. We plan on getting so many kudos, and sometimes people barely say thank you. And we're like, where's my feel goods from this? And we're like, screw it. I'm going to reward myself. And we use food as a reward. I'll go home and have the I deserve it binge from such a job well done. But that's how the living problem is contributing to the eating problem. But diets, again, they don't show us how to live differently. And nobody's making the connection between how you're eating and how you're living. And to me, that's what's missing. We're not stupid, right? As women, we're pretty smart. And we've done a lot of diets by now. And they all pretty much say the same thing, with slight variations. So what's the missing piece? The missing piece is we're using food for emotional reasons, and we're living in a way that we've got to change in order to have a different relationship with food.
Yeah. And if you think about it that way and really understand that piece, it's like, well, of course you can't stop eating because that is your coping mechanism. That's the only way you're going to feel okay in your body. And if you take that away, then you have nothing and just like all these bad feelings. So
that's right.
Yes. Well, how can someone differentiate maybe between feeling the emotional need to eat versus feeling actually hungry and having it be an appropriate time to want to eat?
Yeah, so I recommend something in my book called 3-Meal Magic, which is 3 meals with nothing in between. Super simple. It's kind of how we ate as kids, or was recommended. And I do tell people, like, how would you feed your sweet baby daughter? Like, would you be like, hey, why don't you not eat for 18 hours, shorten your window, and you're going to feel good, and you'll shave off some pounds. Like, we have to think, how would I treat my child that I love so much and will put so much care into? That's not how we treat ourselves. Somehow we got the different standard, which is do all these machinations. And I'm not saying intermittent fasting is not good. It can be really good, but for an emotional eater, it can be really triggering, because when you go so long without eating and then you open up your window, typically you're going to overshoot the mark, and you're going to eat too much, because there's a little trigger inside of us as emotional eaters, which is, when food saved our life at one time, when it was our coping mechanism growing up with hard times, or hard emotions, there's a little part of us that thinks like to eat is to survive. And you make me not eat for a long, long time, I'm going to be like, I'm dying. Like, I'm dying. Like, again, it's not a conscious thought. And then, Katie bar the door when we open up that window. And some people who are emotional eaters or food addicts will use intermittent fasting as a hack, because they're so afraid to be in the kitchen at all. Like, their relationship with food is so codependent, if you will. Like, they need that food so bad that they can't even stand to be in the kitchen, because if they're in the kitchen, they're going to eat. So their solution is stay out of the kitchen for as long as possible, hence intermittent fasting. But I'm like, that's not really a winning solution, like just to stay away from food. How long can you really do that, to stay out of the refrigerator? You have to go out into life. So you really need a better foundation and a better way. And to me, that's to not crave the food, to not need the food, because you have other tools. You don't have that compulsion anymore. You feel kind of meh about food, like you love it and you can leave it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would imagine that, I mean, when you get that starving feeling, then it's going to make it so much worse, and then feed
Yeah.
that cycle even more.
Yeah. So basically that 3 meal, back to your question, the 3 meal magic is really good, because when you eat 3 meals with nothing in between, put like 4 or 5, and you can still intermittent fast. You can still do 12, 13 hours between dinner and breakfast. That's what I do. And, get some benefit. But the thing is, when you eat in a regular way, your body calms down. We've been dieting for so long. Our signals are so messed up. The hunger, the physical versus the emotional. When you just settle and calm yourself down with the 3 regular meals, first of all, that little girl inside that doesn't want to starve, she gets the picture. Oh, you're going to feed her on a regular schedule, just like your little girl. Like, I can trust her to feed me, to feed me in a regular, regulated, sane way, not all these crazy hacks. So that's something right there. And when you do that and you don't do the thing with 3 meal magic also is, when you don't snack in between, which is where so much of our weight gain comes from. It comes from the chips. It comes from the salty, oily nuts. It comes from the Hershey's Kisses. It comes from the candies in that jar that we can just grab. When we're eating in a sane way and we're not eating between meals, that's when we can start to get to know what hunger is on a physical way and what hunger is in an emotional way. Because those 5 hours between breakfast and lunch, or lunch and dinner, that's really informative. Like, if you're not just grazing all day long, you get to check in with yourself, and you will learn over time what which is which, right? Like, you can sit and I still need this instruction. So sometimes 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, I'm starving. And I have to have this little conversation with myself. Really, Tricia, are you starving? I'm like, well, no, obviously, because I ate a good breakfast. Like, I fed myself a good breakfast. So this idea that I'm starving is not true. Okay, so what's happening? What's going on? Well, I have to deal with my taxes today. Well, I sure as hell don't want to do that. So I'm starting to feel like I need something to avoid and distract. So you can suss it out better if you're not numbed out from snacking all day long. You can start to become acquainted with what physical hunger feels like. Wow, the closer I get to 12 when I'm going to eat lunch, the more hungry I get. Like, those are normal signals for somebody that's, further away from breakfast. So it just helps you regulate and get informed about what's what.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I would imagine too that even just feeling a gentle amount of hunger, not that excessive amount of I haven't eaten all day, but I had a really solid breakfast and now it's getting close to lunch and I'm hungry. I would imagine too that over time it creates more safety in that. Like it's okay to feel a little hungry. That's okay.
That's
And I love the self-conversation about, okay, is this really hunger? Is it that I'm just not, upset or not wanting to do something and avoiding it? So yeah, that's beautiful. It's getting
absolutely.
into like a regular, consistent pattern again.
You bet.
Yeah. With snacking, I mean, is there a reason behind why we're craving those salty, sweet, crunchy things?
I mean, for me, they're just more fun. So, but is it really just that? No, it's not just that. I mean, it's easy to me, snacky foods are really a slippery slope. They are typically yummy, salty, they do feel good if they're chips. I mean, they are, definitely lighting up the reward center in our brain, but they are hard to stop. It's so much better to cook a real meal, put it on the plate. And it doesn't have to be that you cook if you hate cooking. I mean, I'm very lucky I live in LA where and you too, like it's where we live. There's so many good, healthy choices. So I have amazing restaurants. Not everybody has that benefit. But I order prepared salads from Goop right down the street. And I have it delivered because it's worth a few extra bucks to have good foods in my refrigerator if I don't have the time to cook. But the point is, I put it in a bowl. I love salads. Like I put it in a bowl. I eat the actual meal. I make it count. I don't eat on the run. Snacky foods we eat on the run, in the car, standing up. These are all no bueno for us because then we don't know we ate. We're not honoring the meal. And that's another thing that Three Meal Magic will do. Like you'll eat. Because sometimes we need to be like reminded to eat because emotional eaters typically are terrible at getting those meals in. Like we're just snacking all day long. We're not eating real food at all. And that's one of the problems with snacky foods is they're not real. They're processed. They're overly processed. And so they're not good for our bodies. Whereas if you are eating a real meal or ordering salads in, you're getting real vegetables. You're getting, proper oils and that kind of thing in your food. So you'll be better nourished. Because it's amazing how many calories you can eat with snacky foods and like you barely feel like you ate or you don't feel nourished. You feel stuffed and gross. You don't feel gross. Like when you start eating clean, you start knowing what not clean eating feels like. Like you're like, ugh, I don't feel good. And for emotional eaters, we've been eating crap for so long. We don't know that we can feel better and we don't know the difference. And once you start doing it, I'm sure your patients feel this way. Like they're like, oh my God, like I didn't realize how bad that food felt in my body. Like we're just waking up when we're in self-care, when we're making self-caring choices, then we'll start noticing. And so anyway, to me, that's why the snacks and all that aren't serving us on many levels, physically, but also emotionally as well.
Yeah. And I feel like those foods are so designed to make them addicting, which doesn't help anything. And
Absolutely.
like you said, there's no nourishment, like no actual nutrients in a lot of them. And so I feel like our body knows that and is like, no, 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 but I still need the nutrients.
Yeah.
So it's like
I don't feel
craving
fat.
more. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of them have sugar in them. Like almost all chips and, fancy kinds of snacky foods, they have sugar in them. Many nuts have sugar in them, right? The one honey roasted and all this. And they're putting sugar in there because they're yummier. They're yummier and you will eat more because the sugar, I mean, once you start eating, for me, when I start eating sugar, I want more sugar. It is so addictive that I want more and I want that sweetness, and that's just a problem.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And with snacking at night, you kind of mentioned that. Is it more of like mostly the shame driving that and wanting to do it alone? Or is there another reason why people tend to be binging or snacking at night?
I mean, definitely because, we can do it in secret. So people don't know how much we're eating. That's part of it. But part of it is that, as emotional eaters, we tend to be super responsible and like we're the type A's getting stuff done, the dependable, responsible one. And we're just tired of it. Like, we're just tired of carrying the weight of everything. And so it's sort of like our little reward where we can, like, everybody's away or not in our face demanding things of us, and it's like our respite time. Like, it's our little ritual that we get to do. But also, when we are busy and responsible, we're filling our day with so much activity. One of the traits of the anatomy of the emotional eater is overdoing. Like, overeaters overdo. We
Mhm.
stuff our schedule with so much because then we don't feel. We're not aware of our feelings when we're so busy. And at the end of the day, we have less busy. So everything we pushed down with food starts to bubble up. The conversation that didn't go well, the bill that we weren't expecting, then we're alone, and like the worries and the fears start to come to the surface, and then we're just alone with it. We haven't done anything healthy to process it, so we're just stuffing it with food at the end of the day. Like, the stress has caught up with us, or the skipping the meals has caught up with us, so that's a lot of it as well.
Okay. Yeah. And are there primarily like certain emotions that are usually driving that? You mentioned a lot of the, maybe more like negative emotions. What are those?
Yeah, so, emotional eating begs the question, like, what are those emotions? What's driving me? And I have the emotions kind of in three buckets, and I call it the PEP test so that people can start. Because a lot of times when I first heard the term emotional eating, I'm like, that's really stupid. I just like food. Like, there's nothing emotional about my eating. I just like food. But, that changed with more awareness. And so the PEP test is a way for people to start tuning in if they are thinking, it's like food. So when you go to the refrigerator, you can take the PEP test, and meaning going to the refrigerator when it's not mealtime and you're just like, I'm missing something. I need something. And the first PEP is an acronym, PEP. The first P stands for painkiller. So food softens the pain. Like, it softens the edges. Let's call it edges. Life is edgy. There's stuff going on that's hard to metabolize, and especially now. So, it's like, it's edgy, and we want to just soften those edges so that we can get through it.
Mhm.
Life, there's so much in life going on. We need support. So, food will kill that pain, the pain of moving, across the country, the pain of a relationship that's struggling, the pain of a dysregulated kid or grandkid. So there's plenty of pain to go around. And food just, it makes us feel less pain. That's why we eat. We eat to feel better. It's anesthetizing us. So the E in PEP stands for escape, because as overeaters, we're also overthinkers. And we are tearing stuff apart. Like, what did he mean by that? Why didn't I receive that invitation? Why did I say that? I should have said this. Our minds are so busy, over busy. And so that is oftentimes is we want to eat to escape our own brains, because we're also not thinking positive thoughts. It's not like we're overthinking positively. So we're thinking negative thoughts. We're worrying. We're awfulizing about the worst case scenarios of any situation. And so we just sit down with our favorite carbs in front of the TV, and we're checking out, and we're trying to escape our own brains because they're so busy. And the final P stands for punishment, which is counterintuitive because we eat for reward. But if we play it out when we've been overeating, it's like we feel stuffed, we feel sick, we're so mad at ourselves. Maybe we cancel brunch with the girls the next day because we're just not feeling good. And that's hardly a reward. Really, it's
Mhm.
not a reward, it's more of a punishment.
Mhm.
And it's like, why would I do that? Well, as overeaters, we're also overfeelers, and we feel guilty about everything. Super easy to pin anything on us because we're like, I did it. No, what was, and it's just a knee jerk for us to take responsibility for everything. So that's a problem. And these are all reasons why. And these are kind of the bucket of emotions. It's like pain, it's fear, and it's guilt. And within those buckets are all kinds of other emotions, but I like to just simplify it and give people that little hack. If you're going to the refrigerator over and over, of an evening looking for something, take the PEP test. Like, what is there something really painful I'm going through, or just an emotion that's tough to feel or face? Am I just like killing myself with thoughts about the workday and what went wrong? Or am I feeling bad about something and need to really put a spotlight on it and address it? So this is just a way for people to kind of see how to do things differently.
Amazing. That's so helpful. I love that it's so quick that they can just do it right when they're grabbing the chips or whatever
Yeah.
it is. Just
Yeah.
check in. That's great. And for someone who maybe is identifying with this of like, okay, I think I have a problem here. What are some things that they can start doing to end this cycle?
Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely recommend taking that quiz. My book is super helpful and a short read. And the truth is, depending on where you are on the quiz spectrum, on the spectrum of emotional eating, getting support is really important. We tend to feel embarrassed about needing support with our eating because we're like, oh God, it's only a cookie. It's not like I'm putting a needle in my arm. The truth is, food is really tough because you have to eat. You can't, like with alcohol or drugs, you can't put the plug in the jug with alcohol, and so you have to take your nemesis out of the refrigerator 3 times a day and eat and get it back in the refrigerator without it killing you.
Mhm.
So it's actually harder. So I just want people to have a reframe around getting help for your eating issues. It makes it so much easier when you're in community with other people who are working on themselves, on the inner stuff, and when they're improving their relationship with food. And the identification is so important. Because we have a lot of shame and secrecy, just coming out into the sunshine and realizing we're not the only ones. In my TEDx talk, I start with something called garbage eating. It's got 3 million views because people are really relating. I reenact my binge and then throwing the rest of the foods out thinking, oh my God, I feel so sick. I'm never eating this again. So I throw out the perfectly good uneaten food. And later I'm like, I know there's some good cookies in there that are perfectly edible. And so I go back and retrieve it. Well, people were like, oh my God, I thought I was the only one, And so it's really important that we have other people who have done crazy things with food to identify with. And we do, because of that anatomy of the emotional eater, we like relate with each other so much with the people pleasing, with the overthinking, the caretaking of other people, being over responsible. So definitely I recommend community with other emotional eaters. But just like today, what people can do, I would say take a good look at your schedule. Chances are you're doing too much. What can you delegate? What can you delete? What can you, defer? Because we just tend to want to do everything and be the good girl, and we're over busy. And that stress is causing stress eating. There's no question about it. The other thing I would recommend, if you can carve out a little bit of time in the morning, even if it's getting up a little bit earlier, like don't pop out of bed and get on your phone. Don't pop it out of bed and go to the gym. Start with some kind of practice in the morning that can really fill your cup spiritually. I call it putting money in your spiritual bank account, because we start out in the red, so you got to put money in the spiritual bank account. Breathing exercises, meditation, reading from the Bible, whatever helps you feel like you're nourishing your soul, because it's not food we're really hungry for. We're hungry for soul food. There's an emptiness there and we need to fill it. It doesn't matter how good our life is. If you're an emotional eater, there's a little bit of a psychic emptiness, and we need to fill it with something positive. Otherwise, it ends up being food. And so having a little morning routine, a spiritual practice where you can get connected to your, yourself, your beautiful higher self is so, so important. So those are some things I would definitely recommend. And then give the 3 meal magic a shot. Try it. At the very least, it'll show you how much you eat for emotional reasons. Like, you'll get a very clear picture of that if you try to just eat 3 meals with nothing in between.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. I mean, I feel like just someone hearing all of what you've shared today is probably going to be so helpful to have that, that feeling of community that you described of it's not just me, and maybe taking some of that shame away of like, this is something that's a byproduct of actually being probably a really wonderful person, something that is like has gotten you really far in life, but just isn't quite the right way of coping.
Yeah.
And so you're giving such amazing tools to really reframe that and start to make huge changes. So I so appreciate you for sharing that with us today and also just, bringing this to the world. We'll
Thank
definitely link
you.
the quiz to the show notes and
Great.
all their information so people can find you and take that because I think that's really helpful as a good starting point to see where they're at with that spectrum.
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate your helping me share this message with other people because it is so, so important.
So important. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.